Issei was in Arrancar, Part 3. I hope you will enjoy. Let's get right into it. Issei has just opened the door to his home. He kept Konako behind him because he had a feeling something was going to happen. His mother always does something, and whenever he gets home, right when he opens the door, a beer bottle is heading towards his head. Issei quickly catches it and places it on the ground. And there he sees his shocked mother laying on the couch with a tie wrapped around her arm and a needle mark. An actual mark of a needle. And sees a needle next to her. And he knows exactly what she was doing. And so can Konako. And Issei just looks at his mother and says, "You need to stop doing this. I don't care if I would have gotten hurt, but you could have hurt my friend. And that is unforgivable." And Konako kind of blushes at this, but also is wondering why his living stays like this. Because she sees completely cracked walls, mold expanding all over the house, and the sink dripping really, really dark water, as if there was some type of things in the water, chemicals. And Issei merely looks at his mother with no rage, just this empty look like he normally does. When he said what he said, it was in a monotone voice. His mom just looks at him and says, "Friends? A doll like you, something so empty, would never have a friend. All you are is just some weirdo, some freak, some reject." And she says this on the top of her lungs. And Issei doesn't really feel anything towards this. He's used to being called this his entire life. But Konako behind him is not so used to this. She yells back and says, "He's not a freak, he's not a reject. He's my friend, and I'll stay by him." And Issei just looks at the girl, and in his mind is wondering, we only know each other for maybe a few days. Why is she already this overprotective of me? And why do I have these feelings about her? Is this what it's like to have a friend? I need to do more study into this subject. And before he could think about more of what he was thinking of, he notices an incoming bottle heading towards Konako. He quickly snatches it from midair before it hits Konako's face. And like on instinct, he just drops it down. On instinct, he was about to throw it back. But he decided to go against that. He placed it down on the ground. His mother looked at him and said, "You think because you have a little friend you can be so fucking arrogant? I see that look in your eyes." Even though Issei had no such look in his eyes, it was the same as normal. But she's so paranoid about it. She's thinking that her son is looking down on him now, which he's never looked down on her, even though he had every right to. She just started grabbing more beer bottles and throwing them. Issei just kept on catching them and placing them to the ground. And then she started throwing 3 at a time. And he caught 2 of them, but one of them nearly hit Konako. He didn't grab it, but he punched the bottle and it completely shattered onto his hand. And some of the actual glass got into his hand, but it didn't pierce through. It fell off of his hand immediately as soon as it tried to stab into him. And Issei picked up the glass and he threw it away. Walked to the kitchen and threw it away. While his mother was shocked. And so was Konako. She ran up to him and wondered if he was okay. And all that Issei did was show his hands and said, "I'm perfectly fine. Could you please leave, Konako? I don't want her to do anything else that would be a hindrance." And Issei says this with slight annoyance, which shocks Konako and shocks his mother because he's never really showed emotion in his voice before. But as soon as the little annoyance came out, it disappeared. As you said, "I'll see you at school later, Konako." And he gives her a peck on the cheek. which she blushes, and she decides to go ahead and leave, though she's worrying about Issei once she goes to the door. So she looks back and says, "Are you going to be okay?" And Issei says, "I'm always going to be okay." And she closes the door behind her and starts walking, like skipping home, very joyful about her day with Issei. And Issei doesn't know why he gave her a peck on the cheek. It was just on instinct. And he's wondering why, while his mother is just trying to piece together why this emotionless doll, this non-human creature, as she calls him, was so human-like and actually defended someone and defended himself for once. And Issei merely looked at her and said, "If you ever try this again." And then the room turned very, very dark. The aura around started being suffocating. And Inko fell off the couch and fell onto the ground and started coughing up saliva and a little bit of blood. And Issei says, "They won't find you. No one will. If you do this again. I hope you understand me. After all, I believe we speak two different languages. So it's okay if a mongrel like yourself won't understand." And Issei just merely goes up the stairs after this, and leaving his mother in terrifying state, because the person that she's always beaten up his entire life, is finally stood up for himself, and had so much of a powerful presence and aura that she couldn't do a single thing about it. And Issei walked up to his room, lay down on his bed, and started contemplating on what happened today. He remembered something happened to him. He remembered he was going out with this girl, and all of a sudden he had his heart pierced. But it felt natural when there was a hole in his heart. It didn't feel unfamiliar. It felt like he always had one. And then he starts thinking to himself, "Am I really turning into an edgelord like they said?" And he doesn't really chuckle or anything, but he's just curious because he looked up what an edgelord is, and he got a dictionary definition of it. Yeah. So he gets up, he goes to his computer, and he looks up, "Hole in your chest. Is it normal?" And then it just shows up sites that just show depression. This isn't what he was looking for, because when he looks down, he sees there's still a hole in his chest when he removes his shirt. And he's curious about what the hell this is, because it didn't disappear. The mask disappeared that was on the side of his head, which he was thankful for, but there's a hole in his chest. And he knows that if someone found this out, then he'd pretty much be screwed. His normal life as he knew it, well, somewhat normal life, would be over. So Issei merely just started putting bandages around himself, just to bandage up that hole in his heart. And then he put on his actual shirt and just went to bed. As soon as he went to sleep and started drifting off, he woke up in a dark room, and he saw 3 figures up in the distance. He walked towards them. He saw one dragon, a completely red dragon, with flames around him, but he also saw another dragon. This dragon was completely made out of bones. It looked very dead. Not from the outside. The outside was obviously dead. It was complete bones. There was no flesh. But there was this darkness around it that masked itself as if it was its flesh. And he saw that its completely pitch black eyes, which was bleeding black blood coming out of it. And then he saw to the left of it, he saw an Oni that was pretty human-sized, but it was completely black with red markings on it, and its eyes were bursting in furious black flames, and the eyes were completely hollowed out. And Issei didn't know what to really mean about what this really meant, because Issei has always been fascinated by the concept of dreams. He's never had one in his life, so he kind of wondered what it would be like to have one. But he's realizing he's having his first dream. But usually dreams mean something, so what does this dream mean? is what he's thinking. And Drake, this one red dragon, gets up and says, "Partner, we have to talk." And he says, "What do you mean by partner?" And he says, "You heard about sacred gears, right?" Then he thinks about that one guy that attacked him. And he says, "Yeah, exactly. What's a sacred gear?" And Drake says, "I'm going to give you the small little thing of it. I'm just going to tell you this. Sacred gears are like superhuman powers inside of an actual equipment. For your example, I am what's known as the boosted gear, or known as the Red Dragon Drake. And I am your partner, and you are my partner. We work together to survive, to be exact. And I have called you here because you have more than one sacred gear." And before he could really say anything, the completely boned dragon said, "No, it's not. We're not sacred gears. What's known as his resurrection." And Drake said, "Hold up, are you talking about a boner joke right now? You're not his penis, are you?" And then he says, "No, resurrection is something that Arrancars have." And he says, "What's an Arrancar?" And he says, "That's what you are. I'm not going to tell you too much into it. I want you to find that out by yourself. But keep in mind, a sacred gear is just an ability you can call forth when you need it. We are something that's a part of you forever and always. You can turn into us. All you need is our names. But unlike the other Arrancars that always get their actual resurrection name and can transform, we won't be giving you ours. You have to earn it." And they disappear. Everything disappears, and Issei just wakes up. And he sees the sun blasting outside and blasting through his room, because he left the curtains open. He usually never does that. But once he looks at the sun, he just can't help but think, it's so beautiful. I actually quite enjoy this. Because usually he likes being in the dark, because as the dark is all he ever really knew. So Issei just gets up. He taps the hole where his chest is, the hole in his chest, and he can still feel there's just a hole still, which he was kind of hoping it would fill back up or something when he woke up. But no, it didn't. He got his uniform on, he walked outside, got down the stairs, saw his mother cowering on the couch as soon as she heard his footsteps, and he just ignored her. Merely made himself some breakfast, made her some breakfast and placed it out on the counter, and made Konako some breakfast, some actual lunch. And he walked out and saw Konako was in front of his house. And when he saw her, she peeked around the corner, just trying not to let Issei see her. But Issei just merely walked up towards her, looked to the side, and saw her hiding behind a lamppost. And Issei couldn't help but to chuckle, which when he chuckled, this kind of caught Konako off guard, because Issei never really laughed before. And Issei was caught off guard from the noise that came out of his mouth. But it wasn't a bad noise, and it wasn't a bad feeling he was feeling. He didn't exactly know how to put it to words, though. So he just walked up to her and ignored the feeling he had before. And he said, "Konako, you didn't have to wait for me here." And she said, "I know, but I just wanted to talk to you more." And Issei just said, "Well, the feeling's mutual. I also wanted to talk to you." And they were walking to school. They were talking, and Issei asked a question which made Konako blush. Issei just merely asked, "Do you have a boyfriend?" Which Konako blushed and was wondering if Issei was going to ask her out. And she said no. And she was expecting Issei to ask her out. But that didn't really happen. What happened, though, was nothing much. But him just saying, "That's quite shocking, because to what I can tell, you're quite beautiful," which made her blush more. And they just continued heading towards the school. Everyone stared at them because, Konako was like the mascot of the school. And she never really liked men. She always stayed away from them. But she's walking with this one guy. Quite odd. And as soon as he got into the school, he felt a weird presence. It was an odd presence. Seemed kind of familiar to him, though. And then he noticed, when he looked in the sky, that there was this rift opening in the sky. This dark portal. And he saw someone entering out of it. Someone with a mask, similar to what he had yesterday. And he had blue, spiky hair. And animalistic features from the way he's acting. And he had a number on himself. But anyway, let's go ahead and end it here. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'm sorry if the mic isn't going well. I'm trying to fix it.